when to uncover your crops. Now here I'm going to use wheatgrass as an example, but this is a topic that covers both wheatgrass and microgreens. And it's really based on the question that gets asked a lot of when should I uncover my crop? And what I mean by that is when do I take it out of the germination stage? So as many growers know, you've got your seeded tray here. You often put another tray or something on top to give it some weight, keep moisture in, keep the light out during the germination stage. And what you're kind of doing there is mimicking the seed being buried under the soil like you would in a garden. And so your crop is going to spend some time in the germination stage, and then you're going to take that covering off, and it's going to get into the light stage, which is what you see now. And the question comes up quite a lot about when should I uncover my crop? And there's no perfect answer for that. I think there's some very good guidelines out there. I'm always looking for certain signs, like when am I seeing the wheatgrass starting to poke out the side of the tray? Is the tray starting to get pushed up by the crop? These are all signs that the crop is really coming to life, is really growing, and is ready to get some sunlight in order to start, or artificial light in this case, in order to start photosynthesizing and producing chlorophyll. So the question is, what is the optimum time? And this is actually going to vary per system. It's going to vary depending on weight. It's going to vary depending on your seeding density. It's going to vary depending on the seed. It's going to vary depending on temperature. So there's lots of things that might make it so if the guideline says uncover your wheatgrass after 3 days of germination, and you're like, I just don't think it's ready, it's going to be 4 days for me, then that's what you need to use for your system. So I did a little bit of playing around with this little batch here, and I think I'm going to use this as the basis for my next experiment series, is what happens when you uncover things at different times. Now I have two trays here. I have my wheatgrass tray here that I use for juicing, and then whenever I do a tray for myself, I do one for our cat, and I put it on the windowsill, and the cat absolutely loves it. Now the question I would ask you here is, which one of these did I uncover first? And I think we might get a variety of different answers. And if you think about stuff we've talked about before, about why we keep things covered and how it affects the vigor of the crop, you could probably go back and forth between the two. So to eliminate suspense, it is actually the little cell pack that we uncovered first. And the reason I uncovered it actually wasn't for any experimental reasons. It was that this one I go through a whole process of covering with another tray. This one I put a wet paper towel and a Pyrex container filled with water over it as a cover. And it just looks stupid, and it's a kind of a pain in the ass, and so I really want to get it uncovered as quickly as possible. And what we can see here is that uncovering it early has given it much more growth. And this has been uncovered for 2 days. This one got uncovered yesterday morning, so just heading into its second day. So what I'm looking at here in this system is me going, it really seems to me that I should be uncovering my wheatgrass fairly early. And basically it would be like as soon as the seed is germinated and it's got some roots into the soil, that's probably a good time. Again, it's often, are you waiting for the crop to start pushing the tray above it off? What are you looking for? But one of the things we're really looking for is, has the seed germinated? Is it sending up a bit of a stem, and is it putting down some roots? And once it has done that to a degree that's sufficient to have it sort of grounded into the soil and really established as a plant, which can happen, very, very quickly, at any point, then you can uncover the crop. And my rule of thumb, and these things are always flexible, is I find it always better to uncover earlier than later. What often happens if you uncover later is it's a longer period of germination and no sunlight. It's covered longer, so there's more pressure, less airflow. There's more things that can go wrong. And in this situation, it really does seem to point to there being a benefit in uncovering early. As we can see, we have much better growth here with the smaller tray. However, another mistake I've made and I see others making is looking at a crop in this stage and going, oh, well, definitely uncover earlier. Look how much more growth there is. However, this is not the stage at which I use this crop. This is not the stage at which I sell this crop. Now, if I was selling this as catgrass, I might, and so this would really keep my cycle shorter for sure. But the question is, when I'm ready to use that crop, what is the difference? Which means I'm going to come back to this, and by the end of the day today, this crop could be the same height as this crop. And so what I'm looking for is early on in the process, I can see that there's an advantage to uncovering early and getting more growth. But what does it look like when it gets to the stage of when I would use it and harvest it? And what often happens is, even though this one seems a little slower because it was covered longer, what might be happening is it's establishing, that the tops don't get as big, but it gets better root growth because it's really maybe trying to push those roots in order to push the stem up, which means it's just delayed in its growth. But when it does grow, it grows faster because it has more rooting area. So this is just a theory. Like, there's lots of things that can be happening here. And so we need to be really, really careful in not assessing a crop and the methodology at a point in the crop cycle that doesn't matter. And I think those of you who are gardeners might have a similar experience where we often, and this is, it's almost the beginning of March, which means people are starting to think here in Vancouver, BC about sowing stuff in their garden, getting their veggie starts going. And I'm one of those people who always wants to get stuff in early, to get a crop out early. And what I found is, sowing stuff early doesn't always and almost rarely gives me an earlier crop. One is when you sow later and you have warmer conditions, the crop tends to grow faster. And then the second thing is the crop that does get ahead, often there's a cold weather spell or something that just sets it back. And so in the end, even when there's weather events and things like that, crops sown later often end up maturing at the same time as crops that are sown earlier. So it's a similar thing here. So I'm going to watch this throughout today. I'm going to check in basically first thing again tomorrow morning and see what happens. I'm sort of thinking about other things as well, like are there other characteristics of earlier or later uncovering that are of benefit? And this might be things like, less disease. I'm expecting less disease on something like that was uncovered earlier because you're getting airflow in there earlier. But for example, this one might have better roots and therefore need less water. In this case, it doesn't matter. This one's a really deep soil tray that holds lots of water. So what I kind of need to do is do this a few times and determine now for my system, do I uncover earlier or do I keep with my system and uncover on day 4 or whatever I'm doing? So, the lesson here maybe is take some guidelines and follow them, but it's really important to spend time really observing your crops, getting to know your crops, and deciding for yourself and for your system what's going to work best. So this was a good little lesson and reminder for me about wheatgrass, where I had been definitely uncovering at a later point, and now may shift me to uncovering a lot earlier. The nice thing about this is that actually today is a day I can give it to my cat, and I would need to wait until tomorrow to give this. So this actually gets it out to the cat a lot earlier. So there's lots of things to consider there, and yeah, this is just that ongoing process of learning the ins and out and the subtleties of growing that are really transferable to other crops. And so when you notice things in one crop, start thinking about those and the principles there that you can transfer over to other crops as you grow more things. So yeah, those are my insights for this morning on when to uncover crops, using wheatgrass as an example. And if I'm on my game tomorrow, I will do a follow-up video so we can take a look at what progress these crops have made in 24 hours.